and welcome back to Spin Doctors Archive, the podcast. I'm Daniel Heinze, and this podcast is all about the band Spin Doctors and their music. Great to have you with us. 12 years after If the River Was Whiskey, Spin Doctors are now releasing their 7th studio album, Face Full of Cake. It consists of 12 great new songs that the band recorded in Asbury Park, and it is the first album with the new bassist Jack Daly. And after talking about all the great albums that the band has released over the course of their career in this podcast, we can now finally take a closer look at some brand new music. And we're doing it again, of course, with Spin Doctors drummer Aaron Comas. Hi, Aaron. Thanks for joining us and welcome back.
Hey, man. How's it going?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
A few days ago, you guys shot a music video for the song Boombox. How was it?
It was great. It was, as you know, this is the 4th video. We've been sort of putting out videos once a month. There's some animated video, and they've been really great. So then we decided to do a video where we're actually in it for Boombox, which is going to come out the same day the record's coming out, finally, April 12th. And so we shot it down in Asbury Park, which just kind of felt full circle since we, as you know, recorded the record down there at Jack's studio. And we did the performance part of the video we did at this really cool club called the Asbury Lanes, which is right on the walk there. It looks really great. And anyway, you'll see it, but we had a good time doing it. You know, we spent the day doing our thing, and then we went to our favorite Italian restaurant, Jimmy's in Asbury, which we went to many times during the making of the record.
So kind of a full circle moment. And you did it with Rich Murray, right? The guy who
that's
did
right. That's kind of cool news. We ended up doing it with Rich Murray, who, as you know, did Two Princes and a lot of the videos back then. He did, let's see, What Time Is It? How Could You Want 'Em? Also, You Let Your Heart Go Too Fast. And of course, Two Princes. So we have a great long history with him, and it's been a while, and it was great to work with him again.
Aaron, as you might remember, we talked about the songs on the new album quite a while ago. Back then, the record wasn't finally mixed and mastered, and it was supposed to be called Boombox. So the recordings were still very fresh, and so were the memories. And that's why you suggested, let's get this conversation from back then out shortly before the release, and then add kind of an update to the end. And this is exactly what we're doing today.
Great. And it's smart because, as you know, things always change, you know, and one thing I can tell you about Spin Doctors records is that the titles always change. Like we always have like a title usually, and then it usually turns into something else, and we're throwing around a million ideas. And so this one, we were going to call the record, I think we probably already talked about it.
Let's not talk about it right now. Let's first listen to what we recorded back then, and then we'll talk in detail about the name change.
You're the editor. You can do that.
So let's start with this conversation that we recorded already, and then we'll get back to you and update you on everything that's happened since then. So please enjoy the first part of our conversation about the making of Face Full of Cake. Aaron, tell us about the new record, and let's go deeper into the new songs after that.
Cool. Yeah, well, it's true. We finally have a new record of original material. We're really excited about it. It was probably the most fun I think we've had making a record since Pocket Full of Kryptonite. It was just a really good time. And, you know, I think the best music, at least in my experience, is made when everything's relaxed, everybody's getting along, and you're having fun. Not to say that you can't make some great stuff with tension. That can also be a creative.
Can be a driver of sorts.
Yeah, it's not as fun, but it can sometimes work well. And we've certainly had tension in our band throughout the years as well during certain sessions. So this session, it was completely tension-free. It was just a pleasure. We recorded it in Asbury Park at Jack Daly's studio, Doug Deep Studios. Got a great studio there. You know, Jack's playing bass on the record. And we just had a ball recording it, man. We stayed down there at this great hotel, the Ocean Club, for like 2 weeks. And we would spend the day in the studio recording, and we'd go out for a nice dinner every night. And it was very relaxed. You know, you have the ocean right over there. And so the process, the actual process of recording the record was really good. And it went pretty quickly. I mean, most of the songs were We didn't do many of the takes more than a lot of times 2 or 3 times. There's a lot of cases where it's usually one of the first 3 takes that we use. So the record has a real fresh vibe on it. The tracks feel really alive and fresh. And then of course we did some overdubbing, and vocal part stuff. And we had our good friend Rob Cloris come in. He played some keyboards on some of the stuff, and Rob's phenomenal. We all have a history with him going back. All 4 of us do have a long history. He used to play with Chris's band, the Give Daddy
exactly.
5.
Yeah.
You know him from there probably, but I've worked with him, on numerous groups and sessions.
Yeah, he's been with the Western Hagen crew for a couple of.
The Western Hagen tours. So Jack knows him as well.
Yeah.
And Eric knows him. So
he was playing on John Popper's solo record on his first one and so on. So lots of great albums.
He's like a brother. I mean, he's one of my best friends too. So he just fit right in. He came in for a couple of days, and
if I remember correctly, he's even an official ex-member of the Black Crowes.
Right, he was in the Black. He's played with a ton of people.
Yes,
cool guy. He's one of my favorite keyboard players. He's just got a phenomenal feel, and he just really, we've historically had some keyboards on records. Sometimes I've played some stuff, or we had Bernie Worrell play on the You Gotta Believe in Something. We had Ivan Neville on Here Comes the Sun.
Yes.
We've had some great keyboards, but it's never been a real super prominent. We're still like a 4-piece guitar rock band. But Rob is one of the things I love about Rob is he's just so subtle, and he's got such a great groove and sound. And so he killed it. So anyway, the sessions were really fun. And, but backtracking a little bit, I guess it was kind of like during the pandemic, we started doing some writing.
Yeah, I remember Chris posting about a writing session at Mike Gordon's place somewhere.
That's right. That's right. So we started talking about, let's get together. It was still the pandemic, so it was a little weird, like everybody was still a little freaked out about everything. But we started grouping off. So I think the first session was Eric and Chris went up to Mike Gordon's, has a place up in Vermont, and offered, we could come up there anytime. So it's kind of right in the middle for Eric and Chris, because Eric lives in Toronto. So they met up there. Chris is in New York City, of course. So they met up there for a couple of days and had a really great time and came back with some cool songs. And then me and Chris got together a few times here at my house. With Chris, I figured out how to write songs with him. You just invite him over for dinner. And then he comes over a couple hours early, and before you know it, we have 3 or 4 songs, and then we have a great dinner. So, and then me and Eric, Eric came to New York, and me and him got together and put some music together to show to Chris. So we worked in all these different groups, kind of like we always do. It was, me and Chris wrote some songs together. Eric and Chris wrote some songs together. Chris brought in some songs on his own that we sort of finished. There's some stuff that the 3 of us wrote, that me and Eric put the music together, and then, and that's always been a sort of the way we've usually written, with the exception of sometimes some songs that actually we wrote on the bandstand, What Time Is It? Or Your Mama's a Pajama, or House, songs. I mean, we just sort of jammed.
Yeah. But if I remember correctly, this is kind of the first proper writing session of the band since 2003 or something, with the Nice Talking to Me. I mean, of course, there were 2 new songs from the If the River Was Whiskey, but most of that stuff was from the catalog, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think that's right. I think there's been a few times, I remember I did some writing with Chris at one point, it was a while ago, and it was cool, but it was nothing really came of it, I think with us, it's what I've realized is you go through periods, and we've had so many sort of strange periods in the band. Whenever people are really focused, everybody's sort of on the same page, it's just a breeze. You know what I mean? So this time it's we knew what we were doing. We had something to without any pressure, we were looking to write a new batch of songs. So, Chris's vibe was great. Everybody's vibe was great. And it was just super organic and really very easy, which is really, when you're struggling to get songs together, you're struggling to record, it's never, in my opinion, it's just more difficult. So that's what was so cool about this process is, from the writing part of it to the recording part of it,
I remember sometime in 2021, I think, Chris sent me a very, very early demo of Buddha on the Lawn, and he was excited about it, and he was like, "Listen, it's happening again." And so I get the idea that you need a certain momentum to be in the zone for writing again, you know. And maybe this happened to you guys.
Yeah, and a lot of it, obviously because Chris is the lyricist and the singer, he's got to really be into it. I mean, it's like, I think there's been times where maybe he was more into, not that he wasn't into it, but maybe not as focused on, or maybe he was focused on his own record or something. And when it really comes to writing, and Chris is a great writer. I mean, I'm really lucky to, as a drummer, somebody who also writes music, to have a guy like Chris to collaborate with. I mean, it's really fortunate, and I know Eric feels the same way. And so Chris's head was just really into it. You know what I mean? So when you have that, it's just a breeze, like Gorilla. Gorilla is one of the songs that's on the record.
So yeah, let's talk about the songs. That's a good idea. Gorilla might sound a bit familiar to hardcore Spin Doctors fans if they know your solo work, as the music is written mostly by you, and there's an instrumental version of the song on one of your solo records. It's Blues for Use, I think, right?
That's right. Yeah. Blues for Use. Yeah, I think it is Blues for Use.
How did that happen? From an instrumental song to a rocking Spin Doctors song that is a staple at your live shows at the moment?
Yeah, I couldn't be happier about it. It came out on one of my records, and it's always sort of been a song that I play it with my band, and it just always went over really well. It's just sort of this cool raw rocking song, and I always kind of had it in my mind, this would be a cool Spin Doctors song, So when we started getting together, one of the times when Eric was in town, it was the same time we also put together those couple days, Rock and Roll Heaven and I Like You Better When Your Butt Was Big and Gorilla. Those were the three songs that we sort of like worked out together.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about those in a minute. But so I brought in Gorilla, and it was basically the sort of the same as on, the arrangement was similar. Chris came up with some cool lyrics. And it was cool. And then we also did, Chris brought in Rock and Roll Heaven, and then we were jamming around at my room over there. And Chris had been talking about I Like You Better When Your Butt Was Big lyrics for a long time. In fact, that was one of the first sets of lyrics he wrote when we were working on talking about new material. And Eric had this great riff, and we just started grooving, and it fit perfectly. And boom, that song just came together like that. And then also Chris brought in Rock and Roll Heaven, which is just a great song. And then I brought in the Gorilla thing. And we were really psyched about all of them. But
so three songs that are pretty different styles, right? Yeah. One is a harder rocking tune. Rock and Roll Heaven is a more upbeat poppy rock song. And I Like You Better is straight funk in a way. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, that's always been kind of our thing, right? If you listen to our records, there's a thread, but we do have a diverse type of songs. And a lot of that is because of the way we write, everybody's sort of contributing. So you're going to get these different sort of elements. So after that, I remember we were really psyched about it. And Chris in particular, I remember he was just so psyched about I Like You Better When Your Butt Was Big and Rock and Roll. And I felt like, okay, Gorilla's it's there, but it's like, and I felt like it was like, most of the songs that we wrote for this record, they felt very complete, and they just felt great. 2 hours after we wrote it, And Gorilla, I felt was cool, but it was still missing something. It wasn't. Knew there was more potential to the song. So we were talking about it. Me and Chris were talking about it, and we talked about like a vocal concept. We were looking for new songs to play at the beginning of the show. You know how we play like different songs when we come on stage. And Chris sent over this Pink song. I can't remember what it's called. We didn't use it, but it had this the way she was singing it was really great. Yeah. And I said to Chris, I was like, that would be a really good sort of, not really like that, but like just sort of the way the phrasing is and the vibe. I think that would really work well on Gorilla. And he was like, yeah, totally. So he like was really psyched about it. He put like the lyrics together, but I still felt like, okay, we need a real chorus. So like the day before we were going to get together again, Chris was going to come over again for one of our writing sessions / dinners. And I added a chorus, I added there's a whole chorus, main chorus of the song. And so I sent it to Chris. I was like, what do you think of this? I think this song could use a chorus. We don't really have one the way it is now. It's kind of like a pre-chorus, So he ran with it. He came over the next day, and that was just great. And then that tune was completed, and it has become a staple of the live shows. It's really gone over well. So, and then again, I told you about I Liked You Better When Your Butt Was Big. That just came together really quickly. And Chris brought in Rock and Roll Heaven, which is just a great song. It's one of my favorite songs on the record. It's just a classic sort of Chris song. And we sort of, did our thing and rearranged it. And, I like the way it's got sort of this raw thing to it. And,
and from the tapes I heard from the last shows last year, people are reacting very, very good to the new songs, right? Yeah. Like Rock and Roll Heaven. And
we're playing a lot of the new songs since we recorded the record, which has been a little over a year now. Yeah. So last summer we played a lot of the new songs in the set, and it has been encouraging because it's one of the hardest things for a band like us that's been around for a long time. Obviously, people of course, they want to hear the hits and the songs they know, which we always play. But then, putting the other songs on the set, it can be challenging because it's got to hold up. And I got to say, certain songs off this new record just fit right into the set. Rock and Roll Heaven, we were doing that as an opener last year a lot. Boombox just goes over great. Gorilla goes over great. It always gets a really big reaction. Those three we've been doing almost every night. And then also, we did Double Park a lot. We did...
I'm the Man You Got.
I'm the Man You Got, which is a great 3-minute... rocker.
I love it.
And it's almost like More Than She Knows or something like in the set. It worked really good.
I get Can't Say No vibes from it. It's like one of those short rocking tunes that you guys are able to pull on.
Bar riffs, it's just classic, and it's it's got that high energy, like 3 minutes. You throw that in the set, and it works. And what else? We Heart of the Highway. We've done a few times.
Yeah, we need to talk about this one. For me, Heart of the Highway was a standout, as well as Double Parked. Where did those two come from?
Yeah, well, Heart of the Highway is a song that I wrote the music to. I was we're staying up, and me and my girlfriend stayed a lot during the pandemic, and we're staying at Airbnbs and stuff up there. And I came up with that music up just one afternoon up there, hanging out. So I think it was the first session that me and Chris got together at our little dinner party writing session. Was the two songs we wrote then were Heart of the Highway and The Moon. So Heart of the Highway was great. I was thrilled about it, and it did come out really good in the studio. It was, I'm lucky because, again, to have a guy like Chris write lyrics, and Eric's always been really receptive to my stuff. It's hard being a drummer if you write music because, you have to, I'm not just sitting there with a guitar. So it's like you have to but Eric's always been great at being encouraging. Luckily he likes the stuff I've written, and he always does a great job interpreting it. That was one of Eric during the session. Eric was always like, this is my favorite song.
Okay.
And he did he played great. And that middle bridge that he kept, that was just sort of like, there was like 8 bars in the middle, really really melody thing that he does before the solo. It just he just played that on the floor, and it just was beautiful, So it was like, again, that's what I mean. Like, that's the thing about these sessions. It just came together quickly. And
this track also features Jack pretty prominently, right? The bass stuff he's doing in the end. So
it kind of goes up sort of like a Who vibe or something.
Yeah. Can we talk about the difference between, like, musically, having Jack in the mix? Did the music change in a way, or was it a different way of recording? I mean, he's listening to the stuff. Of course, he's absolutely there and he's prominent, but he's not as prominent on the records as Mark has been on a lot of tracks, right?
I mean, they're definitely different. Mark's got such a unique style, and he's obviously a huge contributor and to the sound of the band. And he's got such a great, unique style. So obviously it's different. But Jack is, Jack's just like, he's one of the best bass players around,
Sure.
And we've played together a lot in the past. So it's very easy to play with him, and he's very experienced in the recording studio. And so I think it did, everything went a lot faster in a way. I mean, I think with the Spin Doctors, it's always been sort of like, we can sound like horrible or we can sound great. And sometimes it takes a little while. Like, that was like our first couple records so good because a lot of those songs we've been playing for so long, they were just ready to go.
Yeah,
and that's what always made the Spin Doctors great, is when we had really worked stuff out and But sometimes when it was just like go in the studio, and sometimes it would work quickly, but other times we could hit a snag. So, Jack's just he's great in the studio. So everything went really quickly, and he's, it's not as prominent of, Mark's got such his in your face kind of more funky style, and Jack's a little more reserved. But when he wants to step out, he does, like at the end of Hard Way. And he's got all that sort of like, his influences are different. He's got a lot, like for instance, on Heart of the Highway, at the end, you can really hear sort of like a John Entwistle vibe, when he goes up high and it sort of, so yeah, Jack was, really sounds incredible on the record. And it was just, I think he made it easier for everyone.
And to me, he fits into the sound. He brings something new, but he's very supportive to the songs and to the results. So I really dig his style of playing on the album.
All about that. And we've talked about this before. I mean, it's always hard to replace an original member. It's always going to be, and as we've gone through in our conversations, all the different records, there were, I guess, 2 of the records were sort of a different group,
Yeah.
It's always this, you have to acknowledge, you get a perspective looking back, it's always going to be different when you take somebody out, but they're all great records in their own way. And I think with this record, it is different because Mark's not in the band, but it feels great. And it also still really, to me, it really feels like the Spin Doctors still. I think we've retained our sound, but hopefully, change is good. You want to change a little bit.
Sure.
And
I also have in mind a thing that Chris was saying around the release of If the River Was Whiskey. He was like, our next album needs to be a rock album. This was a blues album, and now we need to do a rock album. It was like 8 years ago. And when listening to this new stuff, I get the idea. Of course, there are funky parts and there are folky parts and so on. But all together with all those like short rocking songs in the middle and everything, after your blues album, here comes the rock album in a way. Would you agree to that? Or?
I've heard him say that, but then also a couple years later, he said, I think it's going to be a funk record. So truth is, and I'm sure Chris would say the same thing, you can say whatever you want something's going to be, but it turns into whatever it's going to turn into.
Sure.
You say, I'm going to do it. And again, it's never a good idea to, when you're writing, to try to, at least in my opinion, you got to do what just feels organic at the time. As soon as you start saying, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, it can get, you're thinking too much about it. So again, I said it before, but that's what I love about this record is it was just a natural progression and there wasn't any stress. And again, we went into this to make this record. We were really calling them demos. It's like, we need to make some really good demos and see if we can get some kind of deal or something. I think in the back of our mind, we knew, it was a record.
This is it. Let's talk about the remaining songs that we haven't spoken about. While You're Holding the Moon Over Me, it's a song you mentioned. To me, it's got a folksy vibe. It's not really a ballad, but it tells a story in a way. And it's, to me, it resembles a bit songs like Indifference or something like this, So the more storytelling, folksy vibe of your sound.
Yeah. Again, that was another one that when I had Chris come over for dinner, it was some music I had, and he just nailed it. But yeah, I mean, I think we always sort of saw it as this sort of a rock tune, but moody. It's almost like a ballad, but not really. I always kind of thought of it like the reference that I told the guys was like Waiting on a Friend by the Stones.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What's the other one? I'm forgetting. There's another song that similar vibe, but that and we even sort of there's sort of an alternate bass note that I recommended to Jack. They used on one of those songs. The trick with that song was keeping that mood and not letting it become like straight rock, but somehow it's rock, but it has this moody vibe, sort of like you're right. Like the difference was kind of like that. It's not really about, but there's a vibe there, and that was really important I think in capturing that song.
It's got one of my favorite moments of the new studio stuff. The moment where it turns silent in the end, and Chris is like more talking than singing, and he'd sing about pluck one more bottle, and you have that guitar tone there after that, and it's just like such a precious moment. I really love it. I think this is such a small moment, but such a big hitter if you listen to it for the first time.
It's funny that you say that because at the time when we did it, we were saying like we all really liked that moment. We're like, it's one of the most dynamic moments we've ever recorded. And just the other day, Chris was like, that's my favorite part of the whole record is that little breakdown. I love it too. And it's like, I feel like that's the kind of thing that we were never great at, and it's it is a really nice where everything just breaks down and we kind of subtly come back in, and it just happened real naturally, and that's cool that you noticed that as well.
Yeah, I love it. One of my favorite cuts as well is Heart of the Highway and Double Parked. I really like them all, and I'm not sure to pick like one favorite. Buddha, I'm really into Buddha. I think it's a fantastic hook, and it's a great, funny story.
Double Park was one of the songs that me and Eric put together when he was in town. We've always done that when we get together.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll just jam and something that comes out, or he might have a riff, or I might have a riff. And Double Park, we both had stuff. Like I had that main 7 riff.
That 7 riff, yeah.
Eric came up, with this great verse part and the bridge part, and we just sort of put that together real quickly. And then Chris, came up with those lyrics. And I remember it's funny. At first, I was kind of like, okay, this song's cool, whatever. But it when we finally did it in the studio and it came together, it's one of my favorites. It's sort of like Spin Doctors in a way. It's like
it starts like a ballad. You think it goes into a completely different direction, but then it's that rocking thing.
Yeah, that intro, that was just something that like off the cuff, because it originally just started off on the thing. And I think maybe the second or third take, we were like, let's just do that little thing. Actually Eric started playing the chords of the verse, and it was like, let's just make an intro, do that for 2 bars, and then we'll go in. So it's like a lot of that, that's the kind of stuff that happened all the time on this record. And really on all of our records, a lot of the best moments were like stuff that happened like right on the floor before you're about to record a song. You've been playing it one way for 2 years, and then all of a sudden you come up with some idea that can, like the refrigerator car thing. I mean, we talked about it before, but those are the kind of moments that, in the studio that are just the magic,
Another very interesting cut is the song that, as we speak, it's planned to be the final track of the album, When You Got Turmoil in Your Mind. And it starts as a very gentle, easy, ballady tune that takes a different turn in a way, right?
Yeah, well, that was one of the first ones that Eric and Chris wrote when they when they did that session up at Mike Gordon's place. That was one of the songs that came back from that. And it was a very loose, it was really like a poem Chris had written. For a long time, we just called it the poem. I remember we were at my studio doing some demos, before this one. And they showed me that. And they played me the tape. It was very raw. It was just sort of like this out of time. The chords, everything was there, the chords and the lyrics, but it wasn't even in 4/4. They were just sort of like, I think, just feeling off each other. And then it had that riff. And so we put it together. It's like, okay, let's sit here for a minute and like figure the tempo or figure out how it works. And it ended up with that just great slow groove, and then then it goes into that almost like a
down,
yeah. And it's an awesome song. I can't wait to play it live.
Oh yeah, please do. So let's talk about the remaining songs. One track that is performed by Eric, or lead vocals performed by Eric, it's She Stands Alone. And if you're a nerd like me, the song is kind of familiar. He recorded it like 20 years ago with his side project Cork. I wasn't aware of that when listening to the album, actually. I got the Cork album on shuffle, and I was like, wait, hang on, this is from the new Spins record. And then I realized, no, the other way around. Obviously, Eric brought a song of his into consideration, and you guys agreed on your very, very different version.
The same thing on Nice Talking to Me, right?
Exactly, with Genuine, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a nice patch of songs that he did with Corky Lane from Mountain, So he brought it in, and we loved it. It was great. And that was, Chris, rewrote a few of the lyrics, but it's mostly Eric, and obviously Eric's singing it. That was one of those songs we just killed it. It was, I think we played it once. We might have only done it once. So it was just super high energy, and it just felt great. And it's classic Eric. I play the fucking I had to do the cowbell on it.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun to play live too,
Absolutely. So if I see the list, we touched on every song. I think I was giving praise on Buddha. You didn't tell too much about the song.
It was great. Buddha's a classic. And it's funny because I think at first I was kind of like, okay, whatever. And I know Chris wasn't even that crazy about the song. Nobody really, I can't remember. It was sort of like at the bottom of the list. I mean, it was like, we knew we were going to play it. We really liked the song a lot, but it wasn't like anybody's favorite.
Mm.
And, but somehow it's funny how songs can just sort of rise to the top, and the version we recorded came out great. And
yes, I love it.
It was over really well live, you know. It certainly has that classic Spin Doctors feel. Maybe out of all the songs, it's sort of the most kind of like recognizable, like, you know, old style Spin
Yeah.
Doctors.
To me, it has some of the best vocal work from Chris ever. I love the way he's phrasing it and he's singing at the end. And I really, really like this.
His singing is phenomenal, and the lyrics are wild. They're really hilarious, cool.
And there's like one song left that we haven't talked about, but as you told me before starting the recording, this is the tentatively title song of the album.
There's a couple we haven't talked.
We haven't.
You didn't mention. Let me see my list here.
I'm the Man You Got, Still a Gorilla, Boombox, While You're Holding the Moon. I think we got them all.
No, you didn't do, what's it called? I'm sorry. She Don't Love Me Anymore.
Let's talk about She Don't Love Me Anymore. Yes, of course.
That's the very first new song we ever did. You know, Chris brought that in, you know, and that was the first thing. So that was sort of, in a way, that started the whole thing off. It's like, okay, we got a new song. We're playing it live. It went over really well live. We haven't. We got to put that back in the set. We haven't played it in a while.
Yeah.
And that also, I think, really came out really cool. We changed a few things around as it developed. We changed the phrasing on the, you know, the verses, and we added a key change modulation on the guitar solo. It's great Eric guitar solo.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's also sort of got a real classic Spin Doctor.
Yes, this is one of those songs where I'm like, okay, this is like a Spin Doctor song as you want to hear them, you know?
I mean, I'm glad about, you know, I'm happy about, I always feel like it's good to evolve and have your stuff sound different. And I do think this, as a whole, it's, you know, I like it because it really does sound like Spin Doctors. And you have a song like She Don't Love Me Anymore or Buddha, which really fit into the sort of that, like, wow, okay, that's, and then we have all these other songs, you know, that are different. So I'm happy about that.
The thing I was wondering about She Don't Love Me Anymore, it has this very clever song structure. At the first verse, you're always repeating She Don't Love Me Anymore, but this is left out on the second verse, so it feels like the song gains more tempo in a way at that part. So I really was like, what the fuck at the beginning, but then it was like, this is clever.
That was one of the things we changed, because originally it did do the She Don't Love Me Anymore, and it was like, maybe there's a little too much of that. Let's hold back, and second verse we can leave it out, and you know, let it build up to it. And you know, so it's little subtle arrangement things that can really make something, you know, an already good song a little bit better. And that's something like that.
Great songs. Sorry, it was not intentional to leave it out, but I was so excited to talk about Boombox, as we haven't talked about this one yet. Probably the song you played the most along with Gorilla in the last years and months. So yeah, this is like the opening track and probably the title track of the album, right?
As of right now, I'm pretty sure we're going to call the record Boombox. We've gone to, as we do with all our records, we have tentative titles, working titles, a list of titles. And for a long time, since we made the record, we were always going to call it Rock and Roll Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started to, you know, and then Chris was like, just about 3 weeks ago, you know, where he called me up. He was like, hey man, what do you think? You know, I think we should call it Boombox, you know? And I was like, yeah, you know, you get used to certain things, you know. I was like, yeah, I like that. That could be really cool. But I kind of got used to like the idea of Rock and Roll Heaven. But then Rock and Roll Heaven sounds a little sort of like, it could be taken as like, you know, a little egotistical or something as well.
I see. Okay, yeah.
You know, but I do like the title, and I love the title. But ultimately, and Eric loved the idea of Boombox. So we're gonna call the record Boombox.
Fantastic.
And as of right now, you know, we do have a working sequence, and Boombox is the first song. But that could be changed because, you know, as we have the records is being mixed, it's not mastered yet. So I think we have a really good working sequence, which is almost, with the exception of a one or two flip flops, the order we recorded the songs in. So it's funny how just the way we picked the songs to record, and then so when we made the rough mixes to listen to, which I sent you, that was the order, and we were like, this order sounds, it's pretty cool, you know. I think you learn after being in a band for so long, it's not worth fighting over. Like if we should switch this song to that song.
Yeah,
we're good about it. It's great, and the fact that we recorded the songs in that order. There's something I really love about that, you know, and that's the way we're going to release them.
how important is it for you guys to record an album in times where like everyone is just listening to like 3-minute songs on Spotify? So how much of a thing it is for you to bring a collection of songs instead of like 10 or 12 singles?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we've always come from the school of making albums. I love albums.
Yeah, me too.
And I mean, and people still put out albums. I mean, all the new artists put out records, but listen, I mean, it's just a different time now. You can't expect everybody to listen to a whole record. I know you will. I know the hardcore fan will listen to it, but like, most people are just going to see like whatever the single is on Spotify or whatever. They may never get past that, I mean, or they might not stream the whole record. Hopefully we'll put it out on some vinyl and CDs as well. But it's just a different time. We think in forms of record. We made a record from start to finish. We'll put it out. Hopefully some people will listen to the whole thing.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure a lot of people will.
I don't know. I like to make records.
But in a way, I think it must be exhausting for your artists to deliver that permanent stream of releases and stuff. I mean, what you're doing with an album is like, it's a statement, it's a body of work in a certain time and place, and it stands there. And so the other strategy is to like put out stuff continuously. And to me, this seems like a really exhausting process.
I guess, the idea is it keeps people, you try to keep people engaged.
Yeah.
I understand it. It's just not the way we're an older band, and, like you said, you nailed it. It's a time and a place. It's like a photograph, and we took it and we did it in those 2 weeks in Asbury Park. And it was we had such a good time. And so, this is finally, it's going to soon hopefully come out and you can share that, for me, and I think I can speak for everybody, for me, the best part of every record I've ever been involved in is the process of making the record, the writing process, and then the actual recording of the record, mixing it and completing it. That's the fun part. That's what we do. And the rest of it, it's out of your hands. You hope that people will like it. You hope people will check it out. You hope you might get some help from a record company. But the fun part, I mean, the best part of it for me is done already. And then it's fun to go out and play the songs live,
Sure.
But how you get it, how the record does is out of your control. We're lucky to have some of our records have done very well, and others, but everyone has been I just enjoy the process. And I don't think you can have super high expectations in 2023 about a record. It's just the way it is. So we're not living in some fantasy like, oh, we're going to have a hit single. I mean, it's just, stranger things have happened, but it's not about that. We're just really psyched to get it out there and play these songs, continue to play these songs live. And, we'll take it from there.
Okay, so here we are again, a mere 20 months later. At last, the album release is here, and indeed we need to update our conversation about the rough mixes a bit. Aaron, great to have you back.
Good to be back.
Aaron, perhaps the most important changes since then, you've found a label to release the album on, and it won't be called Boombox or Rock and Roll Heaven, but Face Full of Cake. How did the final album name come about?
Well, as you know, from the very beginning, the title was going to be Rock and Roll Heaven. And then we kind of got tired of that. And then it was like, let's do Boombox. And that was going to be the title for quite a while. And, this always happens with us, every record, because it always goes on too long between the time you finish a record and you put it out. And this one particularly went on a long time. So you get tired of something and you decide to change it. And with Boombox, we really liked it. But in kind of doing a little research, we realized there's already a lot of records out called Boombox. Actually, a friend of ours put out a record called Boombox. And then I went on the internet and looked it up, and I was like, oh my God, there's like 100 albums called Boombox. So,
okay.
Yeah, we were kind of bummed about it because we really liked it, but we just said, let's move on. And then we were going to call it Gorilla. That was going to be the title for a really long time. That was like the third working title. And we even got to the point where we started working on artwork for the cover. And Chris Chris was kind of in charge of, he went for it and started doing artwork. We were working with this guy. Honestly, nobody was really happy with the artwork. I think it's really possible if a really great cover would have appeared for Gorilla, we probably would have just gone with it. But we just didn't, nobody liked the artwork, including Chris, who was working with this guy, just became kind of frustrated. Oh, wait a minute. I got to backtrack a little bit. Actually, it was between Gorilla and Face Full of Cake. Okay. And it was between Gorilla and Face Full of Cake. And we decided to go with Gorilla. Like, it was a pretty strong consensus to go with Gorilla. But then because we didn't like the artwork that was happening, we went with Face Full of Cake. The way we came up with Face Full of Cake was, I asked Chris, I said, do me a favor, because we were kind of having a hard time. I said, Chris, send me all the lyrics. I want to just look through the lyrics. I've always been a fan of titles that were a line out of a song as opposed to a title of a song, kind of like Pocket Full of Kryptonite,
Exactly. Yeah.
Or like, what was that great Alanis Morissette record, Jagged Little Pill, That record was a big hit. She had all these hit songs. I remember when I finally heard the song that had the line Jagged Little Pill in it, I remember thinking, oh, that's really cool. And it kind of all makes sense now. So I scoured the lyrics, and I've always really thought the lyrics to, what's the song with Face Full of Cake in it?
It's Double Park.
Right? I should know this. Double Park, great lyrics. Some of my favorite lyrics on the record. Yeah. And that lyric just jumped out. So I suggested it, and that's how that kind of was thrown in the mix. But it was between Gorilla and that for a long time. And I'm glad that it worked out, because I really love Face Full of Cake. I think it's a really kind of, we've never taken ourselves super seriously. I like the sort of humor in it. And Chris made it the cover. He came up with a great cover idea and did that himself.
Yeah, the artwork looks like he did it all by himself in a way, right?
He did it. It's like, classic Chris artwork, just taking this and taping this together and putting that together and then taking a picture of it. And it's great. I love it. So that's the story with that. But it took a long time to get there.
Great. I really like the new name. I needed to get used to it, as well, as I knew that you were considering other names, but I'm really happy that you called it, that you're calling it Face Full of Cake.
And it's been getting a good reaction now that we've had some press and some singles. People seem to like the title, so that's good,
Another thing that has changed a bit since we last spoke is the song order on the album. For the most part, it remained the same. Only two tracks, which are like Heart of the Highway and Double Parked, have been moved forward a little. What prompted you to do this?
Well, interesting enough, the way we ended up coming up with the original sequence for the record, that was exactly in the order we recorded the record when we were at Jack's recording it. And that really just came from just writing the songs down on a piece of paper. There was no big master plan behind, let's record it in this order. And that was going to be, we liked it. That was going to be the sequence for a long time. And I liked it like that, but it kind of, like, in my opinion, it sort of felt like two-sided. Like, the first half of the record was sort of more of the poppy sort of Spin Doctor stuff, and the second half was sort of more of our weirder sort of material. So I suggested, like, let's take Heart of the Highway and Double Park and move them forward a bit. And it just felt better from a listening perspective to sort of mix up the colors of the songs on the record. And everybody, I remember I was kind of afraid to, like, ask everybody about it, because we had been living with that for so long, and everybody was really kind of married to it. And it took me I had to get the courage up to, like, send them this, like, hey guys, I really think, and everybody was like, across the board, let's do it. And I think, because sequencing is important. I mean, listen, man, it's hard enough to get people to listen to a record from start to finish these days. But regardless of that, we make records. I think most people who make records still think of it like that. And you want to present something that's really going to be as interesting as possible to listen to from start to finish. So I feel like it just sort of improved the listening a little bit.
I think it even improved the album flow and the joy of listening to it, because some of the, let's call them deeper tracks or more weirder songs come earlier than in the first sequence. And so, I think it improved as well.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because if anybody's opinion we respect, it's yours. So that's
thank you very much.
Excellent, dude.
By now, you've played almost all the songs from the album live, except for She Stands Alone and Turmoil. And the studio versions of Still a Gorilla, Rock and Roll Heaven, and Heart of the Highway have been out for a few weeks or days now. How are the reactions? So with the new music in general and to the first singles in particular?
The videos and the first three singles are getting a great reaction. It's really encouraging. Gorilla was the first one, and that we even got like a really nice write up in Rolling Stone about it, and we've been getting some radio play. So it's sort of some unsolicited people important people have reached out about it, and so it's great. It's you never know. You make a record. We've liked this record, but it's sort of been sitting on the shelf for a couple of years, and you wonder, like, God, are people going to like it? How's it going to sound? But when it actually came out and I listened to it, like actually out, it was refreshing because I was like, oh, okay, it actually does sound really good, and people are liking it. So it's cool.
To be honest, releasing Still a Gorilla as the first single seemed like a bold step to me at first. The song sounds very different from the singles you're usually releasing. So what made you do this?
Well, if you haven't seen us live in a while, but like when we play that song live, yeah, I mean, it by far gets the best reaction of the new stuff. It's just like, it's almost like playing a hit. There's something about it, the way people react to the song. And so it's become such a strong moment in our set. It just felt like the right way to come out. I mean, because you're right, it's a little heavier than what a lot of people know of us. But if like a guy like you or anybody that really knows the band knows we have that side to the band, and it's also different these days. It's not as much as at stake as there used to be. It's not like it's going to top 40 radio and it's going to be on MTV and all that.
Exactly. So there's no pressure to put something out that needs to go on the radio, right?
Exactly. So you really, I think it just was kind of a no-brainer. Let's just go with that first. And it worked really well. I mean, because the reaction was like really strong. There was a lot of people, like, you could see the comments, on YouTube and stuff on the social media. People were like surprised, but recognizably us. And it was great. And, Rock and Roll Heaven and the other two are getting a great reaction. And we'll see, Boombox is a little more sort of, I mean, Rock and Roll Heaven and Boombox are sort of more like what maybe people who know like the hits are it's kind of more classic Spin Doctor sound, as we're Gorilla and Heart of the Highway. It's sort of that other side of the band, but we're really thrilled with how great of a reaction everything's getting.
I'm really happy that you guys already put out Heart of the Highway. I think it's, it's still one of my favorite tunes of the album.
That's great. Yeah. A lot of people love that song. I mean, it's like you said, I mean, it's not about having hits. It's not about getting on MTV. Those days are kind of over. It's really just, and it's never been about that for us anyway. But you get in that world, and obviously there's that's just part of it. But so we want to. I think when we decided like what 4 songs we were going to put out and make these videos for, we wanted to represent the whole record. So it's cool.
After a few shows around the record release, most notably the record release show at the Brooklyn Bowl in New York, you're going on a tour all summer with 2 bands that you know very well and with whom you have a long history, Gin Blossoms and Blues Traveler. What can fans expect from this tour?
Well, we'll find out, but it's going to be great. I mean, like you said, we go way back with Blues Traveler, and we go way back with Gin Blossoms too. We toured together in 1994 for a whole summer, and we've done a lot of tours and shows with those guys, as well as Blues Traveler. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think all 3 bands are sounding really strong.
You always say it like John Popper is an honorary member of the Spin Doctors. Will he be doing some sit-ins on the tour, or will you guys appear as guests?
Oh yeah, there'll be lots of sit-ins with all the bands.
Great.
Question about it, there's no doubt.
Fantastic. So buy your tickets and go there if you can.
Absolutely.
Aaron, as a diehard fan of Spin Doctors, I'm always eager for new tunes, and I guess I'm not the only one. And I chatted with Chris recently, and he mentioned that he's already got some ideas brewing for another Spin Doctors album. Is there any way we can speed things up so we won't have to wait another 12 years for a new studio album? I mean, time's flying, and we're all not getting any younger.
Who knows, man? I mean, right now, it's you can see how difficult it is just putting out one and how much goes into it, and it costs a lot of money, and it's a lot. But I mean, look, the band feels really good right now. We're psyched to go out on the road and play these songs and the old songs, and I think we got a really strong 5-10 years ahead of us, because we have a new agent who's doing a great job, and everything feels real good. Yeah, you're not gonna have to wait 12 years for a new record. I can tell you that. I don't think we're gonna put one out in a year, but who knows? I mean, we're always writing. Everybody has lots of material, and I think that it wouldn't be difficult to get a new record together. But we'll how long when we do that, and when one would come out, we'll see. And also we'll see what happens with Capitol. I mean, this is basically it's a 1-album deal. Maybe they'll want to put out another one. We'll have to see, or maybe we'll be back on our own. Who knows? So it's a little early to comment on that.
Exciting times to be a Spin Doctors fan, and fingers crossed that it will all work out the way you guys want, and we're fans will be supporting you for sure. Is there anything else about Faceful of Cake that you would like to share with the fans?
Well, I'm just looking forward to getting it out there, and I hope everybody really likes it. I think if you're I think the old time fans like yourself are definitely going to like it, because it just we talked about it previously, but it just has a real organic, easy feeling to it. I think because we really had a good time making it, we felt absolutely zero pressure in the making of it. And I can hear that in the music. We've talked at this point. We've talked about all our records, and we've sort of dug deep into the creative process and what was going on personally in the band. And so I listen to all those records, or when we talk about it, it brings me back to those times. I think about what was going on with that group, or who was there, who was fighting, and this one, it just felt just super easy. There was no tension whatsoever. And I can hear that. I think a lot of times the best music happens. I mean, tension can make for great music too, but I hear that in this when I listen to this record. It just feels good to listen to. It's easy, and it's the music. There's a lot of diversity in the music and songwriting, and everybody's in top form. So I'm proud of it. I hope everybody likes it. I think people are going to really enjoy the record.
In preparation of our conversation, I did a playlist last night. I made a playlist for myself, and I was just mixing like album songs, old album songs from the earlier albums, from Nice Talking to Me and so on, with the new one. And it was really rewarding and surprising how well the new tunes blended into the catalog and into the melody. It's so Spin Doctors, and it's still fresh and new. So I'm really excited that this is another chapter of the band's history and discography as well.
I appreciate it. And I think for me, what the mark of a successful record in my mind, it's not about sales, and that's always great. But when you've been a band for like 35 years like us, if you can come away with a couple songs from a record that you can put in your set after all these years that really fits in musically, that the people who are there to see it, that's the sort of the bar. I think to me that makes a successful set of songs, and we definitely have already achieved that with this, because as we've been playing a lot of these songs out live, and they go over really well. So. It's like you sort of look back at our records, you see you get all the set lists, you see like sort of what songs make it from all the different records of the set, and they rotate, but not every song comes in, because some of them just don't necessarily work live, but there's a good amount of songs. Like you said, there's only 2 we haven't played yet, and we're going to play them, but they go over great live. They feel right, so to me, that's really like the mark of success.
It's kind of a proof of quality as well, right?
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, listen, a lot of bands make their best work early on, because, you have your whole life to sort of write your first record, and then the hard part comes. And I stand behind all our records. I really like them all. I think they all have great stuff, but it can be difficult at this point in a career for a band to make, what is considered a really strong record. And so I really think we've achieved that. And that's a really nice feeling.
Again, congratulations on Faceful of Cake, and thank you for this interview. I'm already looking forward to our next conversation. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Danny. Great to see you, man.
Okay, dear listeners, if you want to delve deeper into the Spin Doctors catalog and rediscover all the releases since the band's first demos in the late 80s, please listen to the old episodes of this podcast. Aaron and I went through all the releases in detail, and it was quite an experience to dive so deep into the work of our favorite band once again. All set lists, live recordings, Spin Doctors news can be found on our website, spindoctorsarchive.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to support us, please leave a 5-star rating for this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you very much. And that's it for today. I'm Daniel. Thanks for listening, and Mau Bi Jiao, people.
Yeah. All right. Met Sjaak, kom op en laufen.